Nothing but poison oak, star thistle, and rattlesnakes. It's Thursday, the 3rd of August, about 105 degrees. My name's Juan Brown, and you're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. It's time for an Oroville update. I also want to get you an airborne update from the mighty Luscombe. Very busy day today, got a lot to share with you. We had an official press briefing down in Yuba City, California with all the big wigs about the improvement and repairs to the levees all downstream from Oroville towards Marysville, Yuba City, and to about just below the Bear River connection, about 30 miles worth of levees, but more importantly, the 3-mile stretch right around Yuba City. Very special report on improvements that have gone on there that are directly linked to events here at Oroville. What about the rest of the levee system and the fight for money for the long term? What do you say, 20 billion over 30 years, something like that? Right. How's that fight going in Sacramento?
That still goes on.
Yeah.
I mean, so this year, you know, Senator Nielsen and I are really pushing, hey, let's just get started with $100 million a year general fund contribution out of the general taxpayer dollars.
So you single-handedly were able, well, you and Jim were able to get that.
Well, we weren't able to get it through. And that's a problem. So I mean, we weren't able to get in the budget, and so we're going to keep calling for that. And then, you know, long term, yeah, we are going to have to figure out, hey, how do we go about fixing this infrastructure? That's what it is. It's basic infrastructure that needs to be repaired and kept up.
More on this important issue soon as we dredge a bit through the money and politics side of this story. We also got a chance to stop by Matt Schlagar's rice farm of Rice Farming TV. Got to check out his channel and checked out the latest on his rice crop just a few miles downstream of here, and where he gets his water from Oroville Reservoir via the Thermalito Afterbase.
That's California Rice Farming. This is California rice farmer Matt Schlagar. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Matt Schlagar, Schlagalago, Schlagalito.
But more importantly, he is Rice Farming TV, and everything you want to know about rice farming you can see on his award-winning YouTube channel, Rice Farming TV. And there is so many details to this that you got to watch a whole season of Rice Farming TV to even begin to get a grip on what it takes to farm rice in California.
But right now, let's talk about what's going on here at Oroville. Let me get the cell phone camera out so we can zoom in a little better. It'll be a little shaky or video, but show you what's going on. So things are starting to accelerate now as they've got all 3 forms of concrete being poured on this project. Leveling concrete, roller compacted concrete, and structural concrete for the first time. It's just getting ready to be poured right up here on the lower spillway. Zoom in there on the lower spillway. That green patch up there is rebar that's going to be filled with structural concrete to be the final portion of the spillway here for this lower section. In between the concrete forms is the leveling concrete. That's brought up to the top of those forms, and that represents the base of the grade in which they can lay the structural concrete with rebar to form the spillway bottom. You know it's leveling concrete when you see that big green pumper truck working right there, because leveling concrete is viscous or enough to move through that giant tube on that truck. RCC, roller compacted concrete, there ain't no way you're pumping that. You can only dump it and grade it and roll it. In the middle section there, not quite visible from this vantage point, is the roller compacted concrete. You can see it's all gridded off in a grid pattern. And then in the upper spillway, look at that big thunderhead sticking up over the gate structure. By the way, it's the monsoon season out here right now, which doesn't have a lot of impact to us here in the valley area of Northern California other than just sweltering heat. But on the east side of the Sierras, large thunderstorms are forming, and that's what you're seeing over the top of the gate structure there. The upper portion of the spillway is getting the leveling concrete as well up to the top of the forms to form the base of the spillway in which they're going to attach the structural concrete, but they've done it in 2 sections, left and right, and left the center section open so they can run the equipment up and down and fill the areas with leveling concrete. So a little interesting and different process than what they've done here on the lower spillway. I don't know if it's because the slope is less up there and they can run the equipment like that, or what the reasoning is, but that should be a fairly fast way of getting her done. Just to the right is the roller compacted concrete plant, where the concrete is chilled using the liquid nitrogen and ice to keep it at the perfect temperature for rolling, about 55 to 60 degrees. That's the fine pile of crushed rock you see there. That's the aggregate that gives the roller compacted concrete its darker color, and that fine aggregate is coming from the spoil piles over here, which is the remains of Croyle Canyon that they've dredged out of the diversion pool. In fact, they're still dredging to this day the diversion pool. The big diffuser blocks down here at the bottom of the spillway are going to remain in place and get repaired, I think, next year. They'll leave them all battle damaged for this season. Croyle Canyon, we barely knew ya. It's gone to the rock crusher. A huge difference in appearance from just a few short months ago. Primarily filled in for access to the spillway. And all that dirt that's filled into the Croyle Canyon area is going to stay in there through this season. They're not going to clean it out if, in the event the spillway needs to spill over 100,000 CFS and some of that water spills over the side of the spillway. The plan was to use the Croyle Canyon to let that water exit. If that's the case, it's going to blow dirt and debris back into the diversion pool. As I said in the last update, it'll be interesting to see if they even use this spillway next season, or this season, this coming rain season, and if they do, how much. I say this because with a lake level of 700 feet and a fully operational Hyatt power plant with all 6 turbines, and depending on the weather next year, the lake level may not rise to a high enough level to even require using the spillway. Way up there on the left side of the spillway from this vantage point is the work being done on the emergency spillway, including the Secant wall. And we'll look at a bunch of DWR videos and explain what's going on there. The Secant wall, of course, get back in there. The Secant wall, of course, to prevent further erosion from this point back towards the emergency spillway. And off to my right here, of course, is the face of Oroville Dam. Lo and behold, no green spot. But from this vantage point, you can't really see what's going on deep down in the plunge pool. So let's hop in the mighty Luscombe and see what it looks like from the air. It's now Monday the 7th of August, and I want to add an airborne update in the mighty Luscombe. Because from the ground and or the dam cam, you can really only see the lower third of the spillway, what's going on in detail from the ground. I'm getting a lot of interest into what's going on deep down in the plunge pool. That's where a big and interesting part of the story is how they're lifting out of the plunge pool with the roller compacted concrete 150 feet back up to grade for the spillway. And the best way to do that is from the air. Sped up 8 times, this is flying past the wall fire damage, the 6,000 acre fire that destroyed 41 homes in Butte County, just south of Oroville. I'll do a more detailed update on this later. Approaching the lake from the south with a lake level about 784 feet, they continue to lower the lake down to 700 feet with 10,000 CFS out and about 3,000 CFS in. As the lake gets down nice and low, right here is the temperature controlling inlet structure for the Hyatt powerhouse. One of the uninformed comments I got on the last update about rice farming was about the release of warm water from the Thermalito Afterbay back into the Feather River, upsetting the ecology for the salmon. Remember, every dam in California is required to control its temperature for the fish downstream, and that's how they do it here at Oroville, through the curtains in this inlet structure, which draws water at various depths to provide the right temperature for the fish downstream, including the water from the afterbays. As we approach the inlet structure to the main spillway, it looks like they've added a new access road to get up there and inspect and repair the gates as necessary and inspect the inlet for excessive scouring. They're not going to do a lot of work on this inlet structure, and they really don't need to as long as the spillway is functioning normally, at least for this season. The red that you're seeing on the shoreline there is floaty barriers for all the logs from earlier in the year to capture all the debris that came down from the rainstorms. They got that all hauled off and moved off and getting it chipped and burned. Up over the PCC, or structural concrete plant, we begin to get a closer look at the Secant cutoff wall where they're beginning to drill. From DWR footage posted on 1 August, you can see the giant drills drilling the first of the pilings for the Secant wall all the way down to bedrock. Remember, the whole idea of the Secant cutoff wall is to prevent head-cutting erosion at the emergency spillway, like that which caused the evacuation of 188,000 people, if they ever have to use the emergency spillway in the future. First, they're going to drill for the unreinforced, quote, soft pilings about every 4th hole in the form block here, followed by every other hole, all the way down to bedrock, 50 to 75 feet deep. Then they'll drill secant into these soft pilings and pour a reinforced structural concrete piling in between them, creating a very strong structure. Secant cut into each other as opposed to tangent, just right alongside each other, thus the name Secant cutoff wall. My only question is, when are they going to extend the secant wall into the eroded portion of the emergency spillway? Is it the power lines on the temporary shoe fly connection that are in the way of the drill rigs, or do they want to build up the RCC on the emergency spillway in order to get the equipment on top of that to continue the secant cutoff wall? At any rate, they've given themselves 2 seasons, this season and next season, to get the work completed on the emergency spillway so that the emergency spillway can eventually handle a flow of 30,000 CFS over the top of the OG weir. On the upper portion of the spillway, taking a closer look, it looks like they're just tidying up the demolition left over from the unauthorized blasting that must have thrown the schedule off. Here they are still blasting this section as of the 2nd of August. Below that, we see the first signs of structural concrete being poured, the green indicating the epoxy-coated corrosion-resistant rebar inside the wooden form blocks. And here's a closer look at that. The structural concrete form on top of the leveling concrete will give you an idea of how thick the structural portion of this spillway will be. Here you can see the vertical anchor bolts or rock bolts or rebar that are going to tie the entire structural portion of the spillway into the leveling concrete and bedrock below, preventing it from slipping or sliding. And of course there'll be expansion joints between each of these form blocks, and it'll be interesting to see how that's designed. So it looks like they'll do the left and right sides in this section, leaving a road, access road down the middle, and finish up the middle section last. Now we're coming around to the big deep plunge pool, and it looks like they still got a long way to go to fill that up. Now it looks like they've got a dirt road cut into the very deepest part of the deep plunge pool, which they needed access for demolition, but they're going to have to clean all that up for the dental work to get a good clean bite on the bedrock below. It's hard to tell from the DWR footage exactly where the RCC is being placed, but I think we're looking at a combination of leveling concrete and RCC here in the plunge pool. And definitely down here, the darker colored concrete appears to be RCC. And down here in the lower spillway, you can see structural concrete being formed up on top of the leveling concrete, with more rebar and forms being prefabricated on the side to be placed into the spillway. So the 7th of August makes exactly 6 months since the spillway first broke back in February 7th, with about 85 days left until the beginning of November. We'll finish this update up with some overly dramatic DWR footage of roller compacted concrete going on at night. The roller compacted concrete coming from the RCC plant on site being dumped by the dump truck load into position and graded to the desired lift height and then compacted with the rollers. There's the roller in action now. And you see the kind of courthouse looking lights on top of the bulldozer blade there. That works with the GPS to get the lifts at the just right elevation. And you can see the surveyors out there painting the lifts right on the side of the bedrock. Once this operation gets rolling, it's just got to keep going so that each lift bonds to the previous. Compacted 98 to 99% compaction. So stay tuned. Are they going to get this hole filled in time? You guys were asking, what the heck is that under the blue blanket in the back of the hangar? That's Race 84, Nevada City Soapbox Derby Racer, the Torpedo of Truth, built by an aviation friend of mine, Dan Pirro, made out of tube and fabric, like an old airplane, kind of in the shape of a torpedo for maximum aerodynamic efficiency, a couple of ox cart wheels, and it is an absolute handful to drive on our Soapbox Derby course, which is a sketchy course to begin with. Beechcraft Bonanza windshield, Formula One style steering wheel that pops off, bucket seats, movable rudder, air horn for passing traffic, and a set of really crummy Flintstone brakes that rub right on the tire. We got to do the disc brake modification to it, but the idea is to go, it's not to stop in this race. Cessna 150 spinner and a tow hook so that you can hook up your Soapbox Derby cars and drag them back up to the top of the mountain for another run. Nevada City Soapbox Derby, which we run each year, except this year, in Nevada City, it benefits Pioneer Park. Look up on YouTube, Nevada City Soapbox Derby Racer, Dirty Cheating Bastard, and you'll see the funniest video Soapbox Derby racing you've ever seen featuring me in this car.